Hello and welcome to Entrepreneur TV. I am your co-host, Velma Gallant, and I'm thrilled to have you here today. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Dr. James Bryant. He is a licensed professional engineer. He's a certified John Maxwell leadership speaker, trainer, and coach. And James also helps engineers win at work and at home. And welcome to the show, James.
Velma, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with the Entrepreneur Live TV, doing this live stream, and just really here to add value in any way that I can through this conversation.
So today's show topic is engineer your success, because I'm going to hazard a guess, and I might be wrong, but I'm going to hazard a guess that what you bring to the table for your engineers is actually something that us as entrepreneurs could really benefit from learning from you. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so Velma, I'll ask you a question that I pose a lot of time on the show. And so the show is Engineer Your Success with Dr. James Bryant, where we provide tools, tips, and techniques to help you succeed both in business and in life. So as Velma said, we've kind of crystallized that down to helping engineers win at work and at home. But here's the question that I have for you.
Okay.
Are entrepreneurs people too?
I don't know. Sometimes I think we're something else.
Well, I mean, because I tell you what, engineers, people don't always believe this, are people too. So the same issues that engineers struggle with, the same issues that people struggle with, they're the same. They may express themselves differently.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. I may be analytical. I may look at problem solving differently, but still, I have the same struggles that everyone else has. And as a person and as an engineer, I'm here to help provide those tools, those tips, those techniques, those resources for engineers to win at work and at home because they are people too.
I love it. I actually, in my administrative career, I actually worked for a gentleman who was an engineer and a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So are lawyers people? No, I know they are. They get a bad rap just like engineers do. One of the ones that always kind of gets me and I push back against is people will say engineers are bad communicators. I say, really? I don't know about that. I think engineers are great communicators. They're great communicators to other engineers. And so if you're talking to a lawyer is a great communicator to other lawyers because they're speaking the same language. When you begin to
Mm.
translate that and you want to talk to someone else, that's where the issue comes. It's not that they're bad communicators. They may not have the tools to effectively translate what it is they're trying to communicate into a way that the person receiving it can actually do something with it. And so that's one of the things that we help with as well. How
Well,
can we help engineers better translate what they're trying to communicate?
and I think that's a skill that everyone can use.
Yes.
Really.
Entrepreneurs are people too. Engineers are people too. The same things that help you grow as a person will help you grow as an engineer, will help you grow as an entrepreneur.
Well, and we know that how I communicate is not necessarily going to be the way that you communicate. And so it is learning how to listen. And from that, that's how we can learn better how to communicate. At least that's been my experience. I've grew up a talker,
Mhm.
and I've grew into being a listener.
Well, what I say is that everything I needed to learn about communication in business and in life, I didn't learn it in kindergarten. Other people say they learned it in kindergarten. I didn't learn it in grade school or high school. I didn't even learn it in college. I learned it the first 3 years of marriage because
Mm.
that's when it became real to me that everybody doesn't communicate the same way that I communicate. And I had to learn to package what I was communicating in a way that my wife could do something with it. We could take some action or make a decision. Even if that decision was not what I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure that the content of the message was well received. And so I worked on that for 3 years, making sure that that wasn't going to be an issue.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense too. And I think that points to, when it comes to, for example, entrepreneurs, is making sure that we're speaking the language of the people that we're wanting to connect to and wanting to serve. And so it's the same kind of thing.
Yep. And guess what happened when I became a better communicator at home? I became a better communicator at work and in
Uh-huh.
everything that I do. Because as you begin to improve yourself and your skills, that improved person shows up at work. It shows up in your business. It shows up in every aspect of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that you support your target audience with, you call it the engineer's blueprint for a balanced life. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, great. It's a engineer's blueprint for a balanced life is a four-phase process where we walk our clients through really thinking through designing and creating the life of their dreams. What is it that they really want? So in the first phase, it's really focus in on what matters most to you. So I ask my clients, tell me what matters most to you, and inevitably they'll say family, faith, time to myself, all of these things that they say really, really matter. I say, okay, all right. So the next part in that phase is pull out your calendar. Let's actually see how you're using your most valuable resource, your time, to support the things that you say that are important. Well, Velma, I don't need to tell you what happens 90% of the time. 90% of the time, the calendar does not reflect, not on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a quarterly basis, or even a yearly basis, what people say is important to them. And so that gap then exists. So as we transition to that next phase, it's like, okay, you see that this gap exists. Now I want you to imagine what life will look like if you're able to bridge that gap, right? To really match up how you spend your time to the things that you say matter most to you. So you visualize that, you see yourself doing it. And we're engineers. So the next phase two is really, hey, you have to design a plan. So, you see the gap, you design the plan, and then and then you build it. You have to build it. You have to construct it, because if you don't construct it, it's just some things on paper. It's just goals. It's not even goals. It's just lines of wants to. I want to do this. I think I want to do that. Until you start transitioning that to action, that's when you actually start to build the life that you want.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I really hear what you're saying about when you that first stage of what matters most, and then taking a look at the calendar, taking a look at their life, and seeing, are they really, is there a match there, or is there something that is there a disconnect there?
Mhm.
Um, I know a lot of people will say, like, I'm working my 80-hour week for my family because my
That's a lot.
family is important to me, and there's the disconnect there. There is the um like, we might think that we're doing it for our family, but there's probably something underneath that that we've, is it our value?
Yeah, I
You
think
know?
I think we lie to ourselves. I'm just going to be straight up, candid, and blunt. That's an excuse that we use to kind of cover up what's going on. I'm doing this for my family. Okay. Do you spend any time with your family? No. Do you get to enjoy any of the things with your family? No. But I'm doing everything that I'm doing for my family. No, I think there's something underneath. As you mentioned, a value thing. Maybe you get value out of being defined as the provider. Maybe you get value as of working the extra mile and giving all that you can, and putting a patting yourself on the back for all of the hard work that you're doing. And listen, there's no judgment when I say that. If that's a value for you, that's a value for you. But guess what? Be able to name that that's important to you. Don't lie to yourself by saying these other things are important, when really what's important to you is, hey, you're giving your all, you're getting that pat on the back, you're providing for your family in a way that exhausts you, and you feel good about that.
Mhm.
Be honest with yourself.
Well, and it's true, and I think too, I think you really landed on something important there about what matters, because when you were first talking about it, a lot of times it's things,
Mhm.
But is it, have you found more often than not what matters to people are actually their values more so than the things in their lives?
I think it is the values, and a lot of times that expresses itself within the relationships that they have. So I had one client who was having issues with the relationships with his adult children. And, he had worked and was an entrepreneur, and he was working and working and working and saying he was doing it all for his family. But in the formative years, he was busy working and wasn't able to spend time with his family. So when they got older, they really didn't have a relationship
Mhm.
with him. And he really mourned the fact that he didn't have the relationship. So we began to work through the engineer's blueprint to determine what really mattered to him. And although the relationships mattered to him, when we looked at how he was using his schedule, they didn't show up there. And so one of the exercises, one of the things that we did is we started him really working on time blocking, really becoming efficient on how he used his time on other things that he was pursuing. And then
Mm.
after he really mastered that, it was okay. I want you now to work in some time blocks for some dedicated time for you to spend with your children. Say this is going to be the time that I talk to you on the phone. This is going to be the time that I reach out. But again, it's all on how you communicate it. So the way we framed that was, hey, I'm working to really focus on the things that matter most to me. Your relationship matters to me, and I want to make sure that make time in my schedule to pursue our relationship. And over the course of maybe 4 to 6 weeks, all of his three adult kids, they accepted it, they enjoyed it, and he was really happy with the coaching engagement that we had because it got him what mattered most to him.
I like that. I like that because I'm actually hearing that in supporting him with blocking in what he's declared is important to him.
Yes.
So actually following through on his declaration, you were also supporting him with that communication piece,
Mhm.
right? Because those adult children have already had an experience of his communication about
Yes.
relationships. And so
Yes.
there was a transformation that had to happen in that communication too.
It was, and it took some effort and convincing and consistency on his part to actually get through to his adult children because they're listening to the past version of who he was. They're not
Mhm.
listening to whom he is evolving to be. And so that was just an interesting dynamic to see that transformation happen as well. I'm telling you, Velma, I love coaching. That's one of the things I really love is helping people move from where they are to where they want to be and kind of being able to just kind of walk alongside and see these transformations.
So, what motivated you to transition from being an engineer? And I know who you are, never like that aspect of you,
Yeah.
you bring it to the table no matter what, because I mean, I'm hearing you, but with, you're designing a plan and stuff like that. And that sounds a little bit like engineer speak.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And that's because my target market are engineers.
Mhm.
Right. So I eventually had to niche down. When I first, got into life coaching and got into coaching, it was like, James, who you're going to help? I'm going to help everybody. I know I have great tools. I'm a great communicator. I'm going to help everybody. And in my attempt to talk to everybody, nobody heard me
Mhm.
because my message wasn't dialed in. It wasn't specific enough. It was nothing to draw people into the story. So about a little over a year ago, I began to really strictly focus on engineers. And I used to say it was a work-life balance, but nobody really, when you hear work-life balance, they don't think they need help with work-life balance. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah, they
it's almost like the Charlie Brown teacher. Wah, 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 wah,
yes, yes.
wah.
And so that's where as I've been working with clients, as I've been kind of doing the podcast, interviewing guests and listening in, that's when it really began to crystallize. You know what? We help engineers win at work and at home. That's what it's about, winning in both places. And so for me, the transition has really been walking into who I've always been. I've always been
Mhm.
a person who would stand by and coach, other employees, other people, would give advice, even though coaching is not necessarily giving advice, but I've always been that person. And I wanted to grow in those skills. And so I started pursuing developmental opportunities to grow my skill as a coach.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, and to be quite honest, um, I think life develops some of those skills in us anyways, and then there
Yes.
are those of us who just like grab on with both hands and decide that we're going to use it as a way to be able to contribute to people rather than just in our little circle.
Yes. I was having this thought the other day, and I haven't, I want to put something on LinkedIn about it, but there is a big difference between having a superpower and being a superhero.
Say a little more about that.
Well, a superpower means that you are skilled at something, right? If your superpower is communication, like for me, I would say one of my superpowers is being able to translate, to really being able to take the communication from what's being said to kind of packaging it in a way in which other people may be able to understand it. But it is that packaging in a way that other people can understand it and delivering that to them that makes me a superhero. The superhero is how I use my superpower, because even villains have a superpower.
It's true.
So it all depends on how you use it.
It's true. I like that. So your superpower is your skill, but
What
being a
makes you a
superhero
superhero
is
is how you use it.
how you use it,
Yeah, the
right?
difference between a superhero and a villain is not only their motivations, but how they actually use the power that they have, how they've used the experiences that they've had that shapes the power that they wield.
I like that. I like that a lot. And that makes a lot of sense to me as well, because we all have life experiences and you can either use it for the light side or the dark side.
Yeah, that's true. You're either going to use it for the good of other people, for the good of yourself, for the good of other people, or you're going to use it to pull people down. The
Mhm.
choice is yours. You have a superpower. How are you going to use it?
Yeah, and I can see somebody in the group is really resonating with that, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I totally love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so when you were talking about the blueprint, and it's interesting. I know that's something that your target audience is really going to connect with, but there's a lot of us who look at that blueprinting our lives, designing our lives, right? So
Mhm.
this only proves that engineer speak is not just engineer speak.
Engineers are people too, right?
Exactly, exactly. And
And
maybe some of us are a little bit engineery too.
well, here's the thing, Velma. When I begin to crystallize my target market and then really begin to focus in and dial in on my messaging for that market, other people started hearing me. So I don't just serve engineers. That's where I target. But there are other people that are commenting on the podcast, that are reaching out through messaging and emails, and they're saying, I'm not an engineer. I didn't think I was going to get any value from your stuff, but it's great. That's because I have much more clarity about what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, who I'm talking to than I did when I was trying to talk to everybody.
So talk a little bit about your how do you support people to bridge that gap between what they say matters
Mhm.
and what they actually have going on in their lives?
Whew. I mean, there are a whole lot of different ways that we support people in general. One would be through the podcast, Engineer Your Success with Dr. James Bryant. So we have the podcast that's going on. I also have an email that goes out weekly, and that
Mhm.
email may include some teaching elements of it. I think 2 weeks ago it was easy is not the same thing as simple, because a lot of times we think that things are simple, but that doesn't make them easy. Just because they're simple doesn't make it. It's simple to say, here are the 3 steps that you need to take, or here are the 4 phases of the engineer's blueprint, but it may not be easy actually making that transition. And so there's teaching elements that are included in those weekly emails, social media posts, again, to support where people are going. We also do monthly community small group engagement events, virtual events.
Mm.
And so they're limited to just 12 people. We do them virtually via Zoom. I call it the unwebinar because there's no slides, no sales pitch, just added value. So we've talked about overcoming procrastination. We've had some on goal setting on April the 19th at 7 p.m. We're going to do developing your own personal growth plan. Again, maybe it's engineer speak, but we plan for everything else, right? If you want to get healthy, you're going to think about, what am I going to eat? I'm going to plan how I'm going to eat. I'm going to plan, what it is I'm going to do. But when it comes to our own personal development, we don't really plan a lot. We say we want
Mhm.
to grow, but we're not controlling the direction that we grow, not in a way, because here's the thing, what you use will grow. If you use apathy, then your ability to be apathetic will grow. If you use laziness, guess what? You're going to grow in your ability to be lazy. So it's really focusing and targeting, where do you want to grow, being intentional about those areas where you want to see growth. And so we're going to talk about that on April the 19th, developing your own personal growth plan. And that's going to be the community engagement topic for the month of April. So those are ways that we support them. We also have one-on-one coaching, and eventually we're going to do group coaching. But right now I'm just taking on one-on-one clients.
Right, right. And so some of what I heard too, I mean, you were talking about bridging the gap is visualizing, and there's a lot of layers to something like that, because what I think I'm hearing is that when it comes to bridging that gap, you're actually making them look at the the disconnect
Yes.
between what they say is important and what they're actually doing.
Yes. And what that process is more uniquely called within our construct is a mirror moment, where you see
Mm.
yourself for who you are, not who you project to be.
Right.
And it's
Right.
really taking down those layers and asking the right questions so that you can help your clients see themselves for who they are. And in the beginning, when I started this process, it was, okay, we're going to tease out the imposter. So I'm saying that my family is important, but I'm not, that's not really showing up in how I'm living my life. What I'm
Mhm.
also learning is that mirror moments can be used for the reverse as well, because there are many people that are winning at work and at home, but they just don't see it. They're trapped in this
Mm.
paradigm of thinking that they're not enough, that they're not good enough, that what they're doing isn't good enough. But when you begin to see yourself for who you are, not who you project to be, because that projection can be a false positive or a false negative. But when you peel those layers back and you really see yourself for who you are, then you're ready and equipped to build to that next level. Yes, Ken, absolutely. It's helping people be honest with themselves, but sometimes they're not able to see it, at least not through the construct that they're looking at it in the present.
Well, and like you said, like there's two sides to that honesty, and that is seeing the truth of what I'm ignoring,
Mhm.
and seeing the truth of what I am as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So I really like that. I really like that a lot. Um, One of the things that you also said when you were talking about some of the things that are coming up for you is what you use grows.
Yes.
And that one really, it made sense to me a lot, because it's the reminder too of um that same, a lot of people will phrase it as, what you focus on expands and stuff like that, and it is similar to that, but it's a little bit more um real, I guess you could say, because you're talking about the use of it and not just what you're putting your
Yes.
attention on.
Yes. There's a difference between intention and action. So, do I agree that we need to focus our intention on the things that we want to do? Absolutely. But intention alone is not going to make it happen. It's
Mhm.
not going to happen. I don't know if you ever heard the story about The guy is sitting down. There are five birds, on the ledge, and the man says to his son, he says, one of the birds intends to fly away. How many birds are left? And he says four, because one flew away. He said, no, one intended to fly away. He never actually flew. So
Oh, I like
intention and
that.
actions are two different things. And so when your intent meets with your action, that's where change starts to happen. That's where you begin to build in those habits, good or bad, good or
Mm.
bad.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good equation. Intention plus action
Mhm.
equals results.
Yep.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Um, and that points to what you said was the last part of that, or the last phase
Mhm.
of the blueprint, which was design the plan and build it.
Yeah,
Because
you got to build
designing
it.
the plan is the intention,
Mhm.
but building it is putting it into action.
Yep. That's where you execute. If you don't build it, you're not going to have a structure. You're not going to have a bridge. You're not going to have a pavement. You're not going to have a building. You actually have to build it to make it happen. And that's what happens when you design the life that you want. Then you have to build it and put it in action.
I like that a lot. So in order to win in business and at home,
Mhm. Yeah.
we want to look at what matters most to us, take a look at our lives to see if it's actually there or not. And if it's
Mhm.
not, how do we bridge that gap? And then taking that and designing it and actually putting it into action and building it.
Absolutely. And it works. That whole system works whether you're talking about your business or your life. So if you're focused
Mhm.
on business and you say that marketing is important to you, but you don't spend any real resources on your messaging, on dialing in, on understanding your customer, is that really important to you? Is that
Ooh, that's good.
really what you're focused on? You say that that's your intent. You say that that's important, but if you're not focused on it, then is it going to grow? If you don't have action with your intention, is your marketing actually going to give you the results? Or are you just saying it's important and letting the results fall where they may, and then saying, oh, my marketing didn't work?
I think Terry would really like this last few minutes of this. She'd be like, yes. and might actually shake her finger at a few people that she's working with. So I like what Ken put here. Are your decisions aligned with your values?
Yes, absolutely, Ken. There has to be alignment in order for you to get the progress that you want.
Hmm. And not just the decisions, but your actions. Because again, I think that points to what we were talking about intention
Hmm.
plus action actually gets you the results. So you can make a decision,
Hmm.
and then you need to take action on it.
Yeah,
I've decided I'm going to market to XYZ.
you have to
But if you
act. You
don't
have
take
to act
action
on it.
on it, the decision means nothing.
Yeah, I can sit here all day and say I've decided to really provide services to engineers, but unless I'm taking action, reaching out to them, posting and marketing in places where they are, and speaking things in a voice that is familiar to them, that draws them into the story of what we're trying to create, then it doesn't matter what I've decided. What matters is that my decisions, actions, values, all of those things aligned. You have to have all of those things to get where you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that a lot. So we are pretty much at the end of our time. And for those of you who are in Entrepreneurs with Terry Levine on Facebook, James is here. So if you end up having questions for him, please do reach out to him.
Yes.
And for those of you in YouTube land, come on over to Entrepreneurs with Terry Levine on Facebook. Come in here and join us, and you will be able to connect with more like minded, heart based business owners like James, like myself, and some of the people that you've seen engaging with us on this show. And I did hear, James, that you are over on LinkedIn, and that's a great place to connect with you as
Yes.
well. Is that
That is
correct?
correct. Hmm.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us, because this is, I mean, it's a good reminder. Engineers are people too. So the truth is that what you shared here, we all want to design and blueprint our lives. So there's a lot of good value in the conversation that we had today. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh no, Velma, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And hey, if you want to connect with me through the Entrepreneurs Facebook and on LinkedIn. It's James Bryant. If you search for Engineer Your Success with Dr. James Bryant, you'll come up. The business page will come up, and you can connect with me there as well.
Brilliant. Awesome. And thank you to everyone who showed up here, and we will see you on the next show. Have a brilliant day.